All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Houston Ensemble podcast. We are graced at the right time with the right person, Derek, the Gematrinator of Gematrinator.com, Gematrinator channel, one of the greatest channels on YouTube, one of the best resource websites that you can find. We had him on about a year ago. Armin and I follow him 24/7. Tell everybody about him. He is the main guy to run the numbers of life in the world and reality. Derek, thank you for coming. You're a G.
Thanks again, guys. Yeah, I enjoyed our first podcast, so glad to be back again now that, as you said, appropriate timing. I mean, there was actually a lot going on with Milwaukee recently too in the news. You know, we had the big Jeffrey Dahmer was like dominating mainstream culture for a little bit, and then we went right to Houston for the big moon landing ritual in the World Series, and that's where it all went down this past week or two, it seems.
And it's kind of funny that you brought up the moon landing too in that most recent video that you did. I wasn't expecting that when I went to the video, and I feel like just 2 weeks ago I was deep again on the moon landing and everything related to that. And I gotta say, it's a toughie.
You know, I that's actually one thing where I feel like I allow just a little bit of room. Like, I don't know, right? All I'm looking is the numerology. I really do think they faked it, especially since it all occurred on the perfect date. There's a big fake moon landing riddle. If you write out fake moon landing, it equals 69, which is the year they did it. And they did it right at the cusp of Cancer and Leo, the sun and the moon sign. So it all fell together a little too well for me to believe. Some of the footage is pretty interesting, but
I think the numerology part that you're bringing up is actually another portion that not many people are going to run into. Like, especially, for example, me, when I'm going into all that, besides from you, I'm not running into the numerology part of it. And that's just an extra add-on to all that.
What's the significance of 69? Why 69 such year? 69 is the year that really incredible things in American history occurred. So tell us about that, Derek.
Yeah, that's true. I think it starts with astrology, right? The number 69 is very similar to the astrological symbol for Cancer. And Cancer is the only sign on the zodiac of the 12 that's ruled by the moon. So every sign on the zodiac has a ruling celestial body, whether it's a planet or the sun or the moon. And Cancer is the only one where the moon rules it. And then that date I mentioned, July 20th to July 21st, those two dates are basically the cusp of Cancer and Leo, the one moon sign and the one sun sign. And all the way back to the New Testament, we know that eclipse symbolism, is super significant to the Cabal. And the word eclipse, if you write it out in the alphabetic order, where E is 5, C is 3, L is 12, and so on, the word eclipse sums to 69. In another significant cipher, Latin gematria that I teach, the word pi equals 69. And of course, you have the intersection of the moon and the sun merging in the sky, kind of like a yin-yang symbol, which is also similar to that 69. Also in Gematria, fake moon landing equals 69 in reduction. So does July 20th and 20th of July in reverse. So they all have 69 Gematria, and they did it on the 69 date, on the cusp of Cancer and the sun. And even the score of the last game of the World Series, 4-1, that was a number I talked about at length that was coded into the original moon landing, which occurred 4,010 days after NASA was founded in the year 58. And in fact, I also laughed because while that was the first manned moon landing, it was actually Russia who did the first moon landing back in the year 59. And it was on the date, the 13th of September, which is 13/9. And the word Freemasonry sums to 139 and 59, just like the date of that landing. And Freemasonry is really the the secret society that combines, Russia, America, North Korea. A lot of people assume that Russia is just our infinite enemies. So because Russia verified our moon landings, therefore it must be real. But, at the highest levels, all of these countries at the top are kind of working together to give us this nonsense. And then as far as Freemasonry, in reduction, this sums to 58. NASA founded in the year 58. So there's a lot of correlation between what the US and Russia has done in the past when it comes to the moon. And now we're seeing the same riddles with China. Even Israel sent a probe to the moon a couple years ago. So it's much of the same thing over and over. But that number 69, the word circle's also 69. An eclipse, which is 69, the intersection of the two biggest circles in the sky. So to me, the eclipse code is really paramount to almost everything that we see play out in the news. Everything seems to be based in some sort of astrological or lunar riddle. And of course, there are deeper elements to it. But, as far as consistency and showing people what's happening over and over, it's pretty much the same thing, I think.
And
Go ahead.
one good thing that tomorrow we are going to have a lunar eclipse.
Yep.
That's right.
Saros 136, a very significant eclipse number, 136, the big Jesuits number. But
well, I'm going to want you to get into that. But one thing that I want to do kind of before we get super deep, I want as many people to understand this as possible and, kind of be open to the idea of it. And I can't remember if I almost felt like I didn't address this enough last time, just for people watching in general. And I want to talk about very quickly the significance, statistical significance of these correlations. And maybe Derek, you can just kind of briefly talk about that for a second, just that there is a significance to these numerical link-ups. Could you elaborate on that for just a second?
Sure. I guess, you could run statistics on Gematria. So for instance, let's say you take a 12-letter word or phrase and you punch it into the calculator and you'll get several numbers. If you come to the site, you get the base 4 ciphers. So with the base 4 methods of Gematria, these are considered to be the simplest and most relevant, which is, convenient because it's a lot easier to show people when it's just the alphabetic order. So we have the alphabetic order forwards and backwards, which is called reverse, and then the reduction or Pythagorean methods. So let's say you write out a 12-letter word or phrase, and you write out a second 12-letter word or phrase. Now, there's a lot higher chance of you to get like one match in one of those base 4 methods. But oftentimes you get something called a super match, which is like 3 or 4 matches in those base ciphers. And for that to occur, it's roughly less than 0.5%. For a 12-letter word or phrase to have any matching number is a little over 2 or 3%. And then once one number matches, it becomes more likely for more numbers to match, since the ciphers are kind of interconnected like that. One thing I brought up in a recent video is how we had this hammer attack in San Francisco at the home of Paul Pelosi. This very bizarre news story. You have some news outlets reporting that the police got there and, they weren't even arguing. They were together. It seemed like they were together at first. Whatever. The news is throwing all sorts of angles at this, at different people, depending on what side they're on. Well, it just so happens that the old rapper MC Hammer is from the Oakland, San Francisco Bay Area. And what I mentioned in that video is that, there's less than 0.5% of a chance that he's from either Oakland or San Francisco. And the riddle was connected to the Golden State Warriors, who used to be in San Francisco and now play in Oakland. And Paul Pelosi's full name has matching gematria with MC Hammer's full name, 233 ordinal. In fact, I think there were 2 matches, which is less than 1%, given the number of letters in their name. And on top of that, the Warriors game had 233 points in it that same night of the attack. So we have 0.5% that MC Hammer is from there. We have less than 1% that their names match. And then that's also the score of the game. So we're talking about 1 in potentially millions of, coincidences right there. The issue when you introduce statistics is that Well, there are a number of other things that could have aligned that didn't, right? And how do you factor those in? Because there's all these other instances. So that to me is important, or is why it's important for people to stay consistent with the study, because, you know, it's literally every time where something significant happens in a city, you can look at the local sports game that night and see relative numbers in that game's score. I show that in virtually every post I make connected to sports. So for me, it's a matter of consistency, showing people that this same thing is happening over and over. It's not just a one-off, because, you know, if a player, let's say a Hall of Famer dies on a Thursday from the NFL, and then that guy's team is playing in that night's, you know, Thursday night football game, that kind of thing happens like regularly. If it happens just once, then you could say it's a coincidence. Yeah, the Gematria aligns, but that's once. But it's really like every single time this happens. And it even happens when really, really old people die, like it did with Vince Dooley, the old Georgia Bulldogs coach who died on the first day of the World Series this year. And when you look at people 90 years old and older who are dying by the numbers, I don't know about you guys, but I don't have anyone in either side of my family who lived to be 90 years old. But I have some people on YouTube that are trying to convince me that these 90-year-olds are getting murdered by the Jesuit order in the Catholic Church. Well, how did they make sure this person stayed alive long enough to get murdered on this specific date? That's where Gematria gets really interesting to me, is because the more you study, the more you come to learn that this code is the code that's actually running our lives. You know, the dates of birth that each of us are born on seem to be connected to our families and our gematria and our other even interests that we have. So, you know, I do take issue with some YouTubers who claim to have all the answers and know everything, because I firmly believe they don't. And that what we're investigating is oftentimes ritualistic in nature, but, you know, given what NASA's doing, but the reason they're doing this is because they're aware of the organic side, so to speak, and what's happening in our lives every day. So again, that's the fascinating part of it to me.
That's I think that when people see that how dedicated you are to it and how consistent everything is, it's very eye-opening. Real quick, one logistical thing. Armin, can you turn down your computer speaker just a little bit? Because the mic is it's like triggering the voice.
Usually that throws me off, but I've gotten better at dealing with that.
Is that okay?
Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah,
that's clean. Perfect. Armin, you were about to say something earlier.
Well, first of all, let me apologize for my audio. I'm just having hardware issues.
It's all good.
It's not working, but I have a lot of questions that I think, first of all, you were talking about the organic aspect of it. Now, the more and more I pay attention and the more I dive into this as you have, the more I'm baffled at the creeping realization that this is an organic phenomenon. And what appears to be the case, however, is that there are people aware that events happen by the numbers organically. And perhaps that is what's happening here. If you and I are aware of this matrix and aware of how it works, we can kind of play into this reality, where we can kind of line things up in this reality that may give us some sort of astrological or phenomenological energetic advantage over other people. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah, I think that's true to an extent. Someone asked me this similar question last week, and I said, I think there are tools within this reality that you can use to gain an edge, an advantage. You know, be careful of how materialistic you are, because that'll backfire. But when you open that door, you don't necessarily know everything that comes along with it. And that's why I always tell people, like, if you're new to this, like, don't even think about, you know, arithmancy or, you know, doing things by the numbers. Just be careful, you know, like, integrate yourself first into this idea of a matrix and have a little better understanding. But I do agree. I think by doing things on particular dates, that tells other people's subconscious, which is used to things playing out by the numbers, but whereas consciously we're typically not aware of it. That's why I think when they carry out false flag events or big lies, they do it on particular dates, because, it's actually telling something to the subconscious that, oh, this is how it would manifest naturally because the numbers are lining up, even though the front of our brain, we're not necessarily making those calculations.
Yeah. And lastly, to the point about the space race, do you think that essentially the US and USSR were both running a PR or a propaganda campaign, essentially, masked behind so-called shuttles and so-called actual landings? In other words, they must have known that they were both playing this game. And if they were both playing this game, it's almost like, where was there any collaboration? Was there any middle line where, like, you do a little bit of this, I do a little bit of that, we'll both make some money and we'll have our own plot of land, so to speak?
Yeah, I think their motivations primarily, number one, money. Look at how many billions and billions of dollars get funneled to these space agencies with, questionable scientific output, a lot of which seems to be complete fabrication in some cases. I do believe that the same society at the very top was pulling the strings for all those space agencies, which is why we got that first moon landing on a date that lines up with the Gematria of Freemasonry so well. The moon landing itself on a date with 115 numerology. That's the word Masonic. They just keep hammering Masonic numerology into especially things with NASA. And, there are several different secret societies. I try to focus on just a couple, mainly the largest ones, Freemasonry, the Jesuit order, but they seem to be themed with different things. So when it comes to space travel, it does seem like the numbers of Freemasonry are always stamped all over it. And same thing with like SpaceX, what they're doing, Blue Origin, the Jeff Bezos, they're all using the same numerology. And it's actually pretty funny when you look at it. Like, I think it was last year when Bezos took William Shatner up into space.
Yeah.
And that might have been the second one, but whatever the first flight that Jeff Bezos did was so coded. I don't have the post in front of me, but I know I did a video on it.
Speaking of that, we have been thinking about Elon Musk a lot, and I'm sure he's probably been in your mind somewhat too.
Oh, yeah.
On the surface, for certain people, he comes off as a hero type, actually. But that being said, I don't think that's the case. And there are a couple things, very basic things that, we've seen recently that I would say that from. And actually, there are three visual aspects that I think are really interesting to think about. And it's like, why are you doing this? Number one, think about a couple years ago or last year when he went to the party with his former wife Grimes, and he's wearing a priest's costume but in reverse. And I thought, okay, to me that's symbolic. Reverse priest colors with the Roman collar. Second thing, even being married to Grimes, where she's kind of a known dark, what would you say, witch, whatever, stuff like this. Third thing, the picture of him where he's getting out of the car recently, and he's in kind of this Iron Man looking suit, almost more bug-like, but there's large Baphomet heads per se on the costume. Fourthly, you go to his Twitter profile, and the location that he's from is hell.
Ooh, that's reassuring.
Yeah. Right. And it's weird because I'm thinking like, I just like all this collided for me right now. And you think that he's a great guy doing great things. And sure, like the free speech thing, or not even free speech, but the speech thing on Twitter, bringing some people back on Twitter, I can, of course, get behind that.
Sure.
But at the same time, like, I kind of worry about what's in store for the future. And I wouldn't say it's a good idea to obviously just trust him blindly. And so what are your thoughts on that, Derek?
Well, my thoughts initially would be to like look at where he came from, his background,
right?
And
realize,
his mom and his dad highly connected to South African government, powerful people. So this wasn't just a guy who just figured out how to code at a young age, created some software and sold it for billions of dollars. Like, he was placed into this position as a figurehead. And just look at his name, right? Elon Reeve Musk. So this guy, the middle name Reeve, and I think a lot of people equate the name Reeve with Superman, Christopher Reeves. Remember, he fell off a horse in the 90s and ended up dying from his injuries several years later. So here we have this Superman, Elon Musk, he's a space industry, he's doing cars, now he's doing Twitter, social media, he's everywhere. He's like Superman.
Underground tunnels.
Yeah, I mean, which is the dumbest of all his ideas, like the boring, like let's drive underground. It's like we have trains. Anyway, the name Elon Reeve Musk also summing to 69, reverse reduction, that number we discussed. His name also in the base 4 equals 165 and 57, which is the value of Scottish Rite. And it's the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry that's really guiding all of this space stuff that we were just discussing a little bit ago. So he's got the numbers right there. He's got the symbolism with the name Reeve. His birthday, June 28th, leaves 186 days in the year. The name Elon Reeve Musk is 186 in reverse. So there's another suspicious alignment coming from a family, again, that is naming their children based on their birthday. Not that I necessarily have a problem with that. It's just a little weird, So, yeah, I think he's a guy who's placed in these positions. And, I mean, if you ever listen to him talk, he doesn't seem that bright. It seems like he spends a lot of time sitting there looking for the right words. I would expect someone who's in as many industries as successful as he is to be a lot quicker, to be a lot snappier, to have answers ready, and to be more excited about what he's doing. It just feels like he's more close-lipped and, he's more calculated because he doesn't want to say the wrong thing as opposed to just saying what's on his mind, which is what we're led to believe he's doing. So I'm not saying he's necessarily bad or evil. I don't know what the deal is. To me, he's just a figurehead. He probably doesn't know a whole lot more than what we know. I mean, I'm sure he does, but again, they only teach these people what they need to know in order to carry out their function. And his function is to be the front man for this operation. He's probably told, hey, what we're doing is good. It's going to help humanity. Don't worry about it. And, if they revealed anything more evil under the veil, then he might not be willing to do it. You got this guy in the public. So, I'm always cautious about saying how controlled certain people are because, I mean, especially someone like Elon, he's in the public all the time, but again, it's his background that gives it away. And then, Musk equals 44. He buys Twitter for 44 billion. He announced his investment on 4-4.
That's right.
It was 4 months, 4 weeks after Jack Dorsey stepped down. Twitter is 444. So it all ties in a little too well. And then you see he's just like posting memes on Twitter trying to make money. And it's like they're almost making a joke of it,
Yeah,
so
which
that's
is
more or less
almost
my take.
it's almost a little like I think that's one thing that makes you like him because it's refreshing to see that sort of bantering and stuff like that. And, even some people were talking about Donald Trump the other day, and they were talking about some of his quotes, like where he called Kim Jong-un Little Rocket Man, or he called his ex-girlfriend like a horse face. And it's like, I think the reason that there's something different about him is because it's actually like really funny, like from a comedy perspective. It's not good. It's not necessarily a good thing, but it's cracking people up. Now, I messaged you for people who are listening because there's been a lot of stuff that's happened recently. Obviously, this is the Houston Ensemble podcast based out of Houston, Texas. And we just won the World Series. There was the rapper Takeoff that just was shot near the House of Blues downtown, very close to where we live. And when these things happened, I said, "Oh man, we need to have an appointment with our numerologist." And when I was talking to my mom last night, she was like, "Oh, who's your podcast with?" Oh, perfect. She was like, "Oh, who's your podcast with?" And I haven't really explained this to her 100%, so I just thought it's with our numerologist. I don't know if you like that word, but I thought it was funny and I like to use it. So anyway, I wanted to reach out to Derek, for people who are just checking this out, to see what he had to say about all this because I knew you absolutely would. So if you want to kind of get into some of that, we'd be very grateful.
Yeah, sure. I mean, just at an overhead perspective, we have the 118th World Series this year. And the number 118 is something I have previously discussed as being connected to the moon landing. And the reason this is because the Christopher Cornell and Chester Bennington event. So Chris Cornell was born on July 20th, which is the date of the moon landing 5 years later. And then Chester Bennington, who sang at Cornell's funeral, died on July 20th. And this was also connected to the big American eclipse in 2017. So we have Chester Bennington died 33 days before the eclipse, and the name Chester is 33. And Chris Cornell died 3 months, 3 days before that same eclipse, and the name Chris is 33. He's also got the CC initials, just like Chester Charles, CC, 33. So that was a big part of it, right? But the other part was the moon landing riddle. So, him dead on his friend's birthday, which was the date of the moon landing. And if you measure from his birthday, which, look at that, it's also the 20th, right? Just like July 20th. So if you measure from Chester Bennington's birthday, 3/20/76, to Chris Cornell's birthday, 7/20 of 64, you get 11 years and 8 months, 118. Well, look at this, moon landing, 118. So here we are in the 118th World Series, and the Houston Astros, the team named after NASA, the Johnson Space Center, which is down in Houston there. Here come the Astros winning the World Series. And so Houston...
Is it Astros like astrology by any chance?
I'm not totally sure what it's short for. That's a good question. Yeah. I always thought it was connected to the Astro Dome. Like that's kind of why they named him the team after the dome, maybe. I'm not sure. But, clearly there's the symbolism of space travel going on there. So the World Series starts one day after Elon Musk finalizes his deal for Twitter. And on game 1 of the World Series, Twitter was 6,066 days old.
Oh,
now,
right.
666 is the number connected to NASA, National Aeronautics and Space Administration 666, just like fake moon landing, just like Apollo, all 666. And notice how this year's World Series ended at the unusually late date of November 5th because of the strike. Well, the strike was just as scripted as anything that goes on in the news. The reason it ended so late is because the first moon landing occurred on a date with 115 numerology, just like November 5th, the date that the Astros won the World Series. So Houston, right? That's the big theme here. Houston winning. So it's all about Houston. Now, I don't know if you remember, but back in 2012, pop star Whitney Houston was found dead in a bathtub in a very unusual story. Not sure how many people really die in their bathtubs, but that was something that was reported in 2012. Well, the same day that the Astros won the World Series, we learned that pop star Aaron Carter was found dead in his bathtub. Again, what are the odds of this? The same exact day, November 5th. And the word bathtub equals 115, just like the date of the moon landing, 115. The word killing, also 115. In fact, this 118 connecting to the Astros, this is also the gematria of death and homicide in Latin, where death is 118, so is homicide. So you have this convergence.
Whitney Houston also died on November 5th?
No, but she died on 2/11, which I can talk about also.
Okay.
But we get this, we get this connection with 115 and 118, and those are already two significant numbers of death. So it's no surprise we got, someone dying on that same day. Whitney Elizabeth Houston, her name sums to 115 and 304. 34 was the age that Aaron Carter was when he died. And then Whitney Houston's daughter also found in a bathtub unconscious, which led to her death in a coma several months later. So it wasn't just Whitney Houston, her daughter also. And her daughter was born on 3/4, just like the word murder.
Wow.
So the number 33 was also very big because pop star equals 33, and pop star has matching gematria with Aaron Carter. Well, this pop star, Aaron Carter, died 33 days before his birthday. Bobby Brown, Whitney's daughter, died 33 weeks after his birthday. And when Whitney died, it was 66 days after his birthday. And 66 is the value of 33. Also 33 times 2. And then Whitney Houston, her name is 6 times 6 times 6, 216.
Oh, shit.
And she died on 211. And 666 equals 211. The big thing with Aaron Carter was also the Disney company. So the number 66 and 666 are huge to Disney. They actually have the number 666 coded into their logo. And Walt Disney died in the year 66.
Mm.
So 666 is the 36th triangular number. And if you add the digits in 666, it sums to 18. The name Aaron Charles Carter equals 306 and 180. And Disney was 36,180 days old when he died. So a lot of 666 with the Astros World Series. And then we also got the shooting of rapper Takeoff in Houston during the World Series. And Takeoff had one solo album during his music career. And that album was called The Last Rocket. And he dies in Houston, home of the Rockets, the big NASA territory. Takeoff's career started in 2008. He died at the age of 28. Takeoff equals 28. Rockets is 28. Their first big single, Versace, equals 28.
Oh, wow.
And he died 208 weeks after his album. The word kill equals 28 and 17. The Rockets fell to 1 and 7 on the date he died. The number of points in the game connects to his hometown. The group Migos was from Lawrenceville. Something else that stood out is that while all this was going on, remember Elon Musk bought Twitter, right? Twitter had that 666 connection to the World Series. Well, during the World Series, the same day that Takeoff was killed, SpaceX launched the Falcon Heavy rocket for the first time in 3 years, the world's most powerful rocket. Also, NASA has been working on launching its Artemis rocket, which is going to take people back to the moon, allegedly. All of this happening this week, while North Korea is also launching rockets over South Korea and Japan. Let's see. And this was all connected to Versace. So, I know you guys are into music. I try to be open-minded and listen to this music, you know, whenever like a rapper dies, just to see. Because sometimes I'm surprised, and it's actually decent music. It was not the case here with Migos, unfortunately. But this song Versace that came out, their big first single, Gianni Versace, who was assassinated back in 97, would have been exactly 911 months old on the date that Takeoff died.
Oh,
9/11, the value of ritual human sacrifice. 9/11 is also Versace flipped upside down. And if you measure from Versace to Takeoff's death, it was 9 years, 116 days. So you get the 9/11 and the 116. And there was a hell of a lot more there too.
My God.
But what are the odds that all of these things, happened in Houston, right? I mean, Takeoff was from Atlanta. So for him to be in Houston and just happen to die there, all while these rockets are getting launched. And then remember this crowd crush thing too. I didn't even mention that. You know, a big part of the reason I was on your podcast to begin with was to talk about this Astro World stampede, where all these people died. And I don't know if you remember, but just a week ago, we had a big news story out of South Korea where there was a big crowd crush that allegedly killed 150 people. And that crowd crush was in Seoul, and it was for Halloween, which is All Souls Day.
Mm.
And then a week later, on the anniversary of the crowd crush in Houston, the Houston Astros win the World Series.
Mm.
And I guess what I definitely should go over is the number 666 here. So Twitter had the 666 in its age. Migos lost one of its 3 rap members, meaning there's only 2 left. 2 divided by 3 is 666. Remember the guy who ran Astro World was Travis Scott. His real name equals 1666. His birthday was on the same anniversary of the Church of Satan. The Church of Satan was 666 months and 6 days old for the Astro World Stampede, whereas Travis Scott was 366 months and 6 days old. The Stampede was also 20,666 days after the Astrodome opened. And there was a bizarre news story that came out saying that employees at the festival were instructed to call dead bodies Smurfs. And when you measure from the debut of the Smurfs to the Stampede, it was 14,666 days. So if you go forward, well, okay, let's talk about Astro World, right? The album this whole festival was named after. That album came out on the date, the 3rd of August in 2018. So think about how that's written internationally, 3/8/2018. In Hebrew Gematria, the word moon equals 38 and 218. And then the Houston Astros played 666 games.
Can you not do that right now? Is that possible?
To get to the World Series. And this was the 61st season of the Houston Astros. The 61st prime number is the Gematria of the moon and 666.
Wow.
Let me walk out of here for 1 second. Please continue. I'm so sorry, but I need to make sure that this does not happen next to me.
Mm-hmm. Keep going, Derek.
Looks like someone's grilling or something over there. But yeah, so the number 666 in numerology is strongly connected to 111. And this is simply because the Sumerian cipher multiplies ordinal by 6. So any number or any sum of 111 will also give you a 666.
Mm-hmm.
And there's more reasons for this too. But when the Astros first won the World Series in 2017, they did so on November 1st, 11/1. And when you write out 666 in ordinal, you get 275. Well, if you go forward 275 days from 11/1, the Houston Astros played the Dodgers again. And it was the same date that Astro World came out. And it was both teams' 111th game. 275 days after 11/1. And remember, this only happens like once every 8 years or so, where the Astros travel to LA to play the Dodgers because they're in opposite leagues. So this was really, really unlikely to happen. And think about where LA plays. The Dodgers, they play very close to Hollywood. And what do the Red Hot Chili Peppers say? Space may be the final frontier, but it's made in a Hollywood basement. So here the Houston Astros win the World Series in Hollywood, and then they go back to Hollywood for this ritualistic game where they win 2-1 on the same day that Astro World came out. And 2-1 is the Gematria of Moon, 21 and 210. And who wins that game? Justin Verlander. Justin equals 21. He was 201 days before his birthday. He picked up his 210th career victory, and his next birthday would have been his 36th. Well, the moon equals 36. 36 connects to 666. 666 even gives us 201, right? So you have all these alignments. This is the thing. It's like they do drop clues for people betting on sports. Like they do try to tell people who's winning. The problem is the code is so heavy and like so intertwined with so many other things that are going on. It is difficult to pick this out before it happens. You know what I mean? Like I talk to a lot of people about numerology frequently, and only the very day of Game 6 of the World Series did I find out this was the Astros 666 game since Astro World. So, you know, there's multiple riddles going on, and I strongly believe that if too much money goes on one riddle, Vegas will pull the trigger, flip the switch, and have the other team win. I mean, that's my theory, because I don't think Vegas made sports gambling legal so that all of us can get rich on sports. That would melt the economy. That's not how things work. Makes a lot more sense to me that the reason they made it legal is because now they have it fully under grasp. They're comfortable with where they are rigging games. And now they can really milk people, just like they're already doing with the lottery, you know? How many tickets did they sell on this $2 billion jackpot that someone's allegedly going to get?
That's so, you know, I was watching the primetime news last night for the first time in a long time. And it's hard to watch. It's very hard to watch when you're away from that for a long time, but there happens to be a TV on where that's playing. and they were talking about the lottery, and they were interviewing all the people who were buying lottery tickets. And it was pretty unfortunate because they interviewed one type of person, and this was a very low socioeconomic, maybe very obviously seeming, and I don't mean this in a mean way, but like low intelligence or drug addict per se. Like you look at this person they're interviewing and say, "Oh wow, she's on meth," because of the sores and the the look. And but then for another news segment, they're interviewing one specific type of people to facilitate a certain cultural narrative that we can all clearly see. And I'm just like, man, this is very odd. And with this lottery thing, is it that there's a number that is the winning number already called out, and then whoever gets that ticket, that's it right now? Like the number's already been called, I think.
You're talking about the actual Powerball numbers or the total
The
jackpot?
the actual winning Powerball number, that's already a known number, but we have to wait for somebody to get that ticket. Is that how it works?
No, it's like there's a drawing every 2 or 3 times a week, so that
Oh, a draw.
um,
Okay.
yeah. So
I realized
now
I
here's
didn't
the
know.
thing: is that when you buy your tickets, it goes into a system so that if there's a winning ticket out there, they know that right away. They
Mhm.
say, "Oh, we had a winning ticket sold in Mississippi." So my
Okay.
concern is that all your numbers go into a database somewhere, and I don't know. I've never been to the building where they draw these numbers, but is it possible for them to make sure that nobody wins on a given date? Just say, here's a combination of numbers. I mean, there's 293 million combinations. Even if they sell 1 billion tickets, there's still likely to be some combinations that aren't taken. So, they could just scoop one of those combinations, inflate the jackpot. So every once in a while, they have this mega super jackpot that no one wins. And every time they do that, people, spend more and more money on the lottery. And is someone really legit even really winning these lotteries? That's the question. I mean, I don't think everyone is fake, because then it might be too easy to expose, but all it takes is for them to steal a couple jackpots, and that's a hell of a lot of money.
Well, they just need to set it up so they're winning more money than losing, and that's all they need to do. And they can just crank that as much as they want. Just
Yeah,
like
I mean,
casino, like exactly like a casino would do.
right. I mean, the odds are already in their favor. It's not like they
Right.
need to steal money, but
Right.
sometimes you wonder. I mean, I've just seen so many things fucked up
I
in
mean,
the
My
world.
question
I just
is,
assume there's a
do you think that a sacrifice is basically is it organically required? Is it required by the secret societies? There's always a sacrifice.
good question.
So
Like
what's going on? Does the universe need me to sacrifice something out to get something else? Is that how it works?
Well, if you go back to the ancient beliefs of the Incas and the Mayans, it's that if they didn't commit a sacrifice, then Satan would come and take its own. It would decide. And so it's their way of saying, okay, we're going to be the rulers of who goes. And then when they appease their gods with that sacrifice, then that god doesn't come to claim anything else, because their vote had been satisfied. So I mean, I just think that's a philosophy that just never died. We talk about it as if it's historical and only practiced by ancient societies, but I just think the rulers have been carrying that tradition through till this very day. And the way I look at it is that, when we see sports play out by the numbers like they do, just as an example, game 1 of the World Series, which was completely by the numbers, the final score, all of it, in the I think it was the 9th or 10th inning. Yeah, the bottom of the 9th inning, they had guys on base, and there was a pop fly to right field. And Castellanos had to run full speed and just got there at the last second, right? The point I'm making that is that if he doesn't make that catch, the game ends, and all of the numerology that we talked about is ruined, right? But every time, it still pans out. It always does. And I'm not convinced that they can control where they're hitting the ball down to the inch on the field, or that there's technology that's guiding the ball down. I don't believe that. I think I wonder anyway. I don't have a belief necessarily, but is it possible that, when they do sacrifices for sports games like that, is that energy then feeding into the numerology that manifests in that game? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Are we essentially witnessing the spiritual consequence of a sacrifice? Really kind of creepy to think about.
Mhm.
But I've heard many people say like, oh, that play was scripted, that play was rigged. Well, either they're really good at getting these scripted plays 100% of the time right, or like there's something else going on. And I mean, I just, another thing too, that 2016 World Series with the Cubs, which is what sent me completely into a different realm as far as my life path and everything. In that game, that big game-changing home run in the 8th inning literally hit the camera in left field, which I've never seen happen in a baseball game.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, look it up, man. The Rajai Davis home run in the 8th inning hits the camera in left field, and the cameraman falls. It's all, the cameraman spins and sees the crowd, which is all going crazy. It's like from a different world. I mean, it's unbelievable. But like, what game had more energy focused on it than that? That was the game. And it just so happens that the ball hits the camera. Like, to me, that's the hand of God. Like, check this out. Like, look what I can do, And it just kind of slips. It just slips under the radar. No one talks about it. No one mentions it. But like, when I was watching that game, it blew my fucking mind. Another example, real quick, the Tim Tebow game. Everyone talks about the Tim Tebow game with numerology. Even ESPN did their own decode on that game, where he threw for 316 yards, 31.6 average. He had the 316 eye black. Remember, it was on the anniversary of his 316 game. And the TV rating was 31.6, they told us. Well, if you go back to the very first play of that game, the kicker, he kicks the opening kickoff. It hits the goalpost, the dead center of the goalpost in the opposite end zone, bounces back, and lands perfectly on the 20-yard line, exactly where they snapped the ball from. And I'm like, even if you had technology, I don't think you could do that, because you're talking about a football, which bounces based on how it lands on that particular drop, So for that to happen, that to me was the hand of God, like, look what I got in store for this game. And then we see the numerology manifest after that. I mean, and that was back, by the way, when the touchback was at the 20-yard line back in 2011. And like, what are the odds, So to me, that when you put all these hundreds of thousands and millions of people, when they all focus energy on the same thing, that's essentially ritual. That is magic. That's the definition of magic, is focused, intense energy and emotion on a particular event. And sports draw so much emotion, particularly from the male side of the population. What better place for a ritual than a sports game to draw that energy, that emotion that's pouring out of people? I think the world just responds to it. When I launched Gematrinator 85, not the website itself, but the business entity, we did this back in March, on March 1st. And at that point, I had been doing Gematria for just over 5 years. Well, the very next day in the news, I saw that Derek Jeter stepped down as the CEO of the Marlins. So my name is Derek, D-E-R-E-K. Derek Jeter is the #1 most famous Derek in the world. And I started a new business venture after 5 years. That same day I did that, Derek Jeter steps down after his 5-year business venture.
Oh, wow.
That's the world. That's synchronicity, man. That's the world feeding back your energy, your effort. You did something official. You put it on paper. You put energy and emotion and stuff into it. Boom. The Matrix feeds it back. And that happened. There were actually other news stories where, like, I almost get choked up thinking about it because it's so wild. But that's what I think we're living in, man. And that's the part of this matrix I want people to see. I don't want them to just wake up to what the media is doing and how they control their minds, but how there's this other side of reality where there's like a force, this, people call it God, the creator, the geometer, whatever it is. I think it's more neutral than strictly benevolent, but it's responsive to positive output, whether that's love or, honest, hard work. There's something in the background that's operating that will feed that energy back to you. And it's actually evident through numbers. It wasn't just that I had a synchronicity with Derek Jeter, but I checked his age. And this is a guy who was born in 74, which is the Gematria of Gematria. He had a bunch of Gematria numbers lined up on that date. So it's as if everything has already happened to a degree. We're just here to live it all out and experience that. The problem is that too many people don't understand that. They lose sight of what they're here to do, and they don't end up fulfilling that. And there's all these synchronicities they miss out on. There's all this exciting things in the world that they miss out on because they were worried about how depressed they were and how anxious they are, and how shitty their lives are, and if they only had another chance at something. And that's the vibration that the media keeps you in. That's why racism is always pushed, is because they want people to think that they're under, that they don't have the right advantage, that they're unable to accomplish what they're truly capable of. And thus, they fall into poverty, and then they rely on the state, and the system grows and gets more power because there's more people who are dependent on it.
Yeah, man, I completely agree with that. That also just reminded me, just synchronistic in a way. I feel like it's important even that we're doing this podcast before tomorrow, November 8th, which is a beaver blood moon lunar eclipse, and also election day. And actually, I'm going to plan on putting this podcast out like tonight or tomorrow morning, like getting it edited and exported, because I think it's that important. And just the fact that it worked out is kind of important to me, synchronistic for me. Do you have any thoughts, maybe even a loose prediction about anything that's going to happen tomorrow?
I don't. I think when it comes to eclipses, it's actually uncommon for us to see things on that date in the media. There was a big exception last week for the solar eclipse, where the United Kingdom got a new prime minister, and his name was Rishi Sunak. He's actually got the word "sun" in his last name.
Good video, by the way.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, that
one. I was like, "Ooh, boy!"
The one with Michael Phelps. His dad died on the same day, and he looks just like the new British prime minister.
Yeah, there was a lot
weird stuff. So there is an example of like a ritual on a date, but you almost never see like a huge event on the date of an eclipse. That they don't really typically do that.
Right. That's true.
This one falling on November 8th is a little interesting though, considering that we just had the 118th World Series, the big number connected to death, and we had the big moon landing ritual. Now we got a moon eclipse on 11/8. They're even saying the magnitude of this eclipse is 1.36, which stands out because it belongs to Saros 136.
Right.
And when you write out the Jesuits, it equals 136. I think with some of these eclipse numbers, there's probably room for a little manipulation, so that they can get the numbers they want. I don't know.
I'm kind of wondering about this. I actually, because I was like traveling yesterday and traveling the day before, I didn't do all the homework that I wanted to do for this podcast, but I'm kind of wondering about the beaver, like the word beaver. Is that going to relate to anything? What is beaver? Obviously, we know what the blood moon stands for, but when I saw beaver last night, I was like, huh? And then on the news, on a screenshot that I took and sent to some people, I think it was like, man, I'll have to look at it. It was a major news thing. It was just the first thing that came, where they connected the beaver blood moon to the election in a way that I thought was significant enough for me to think about. And so I'm just kind of wondering what you think about that.
Well, to be honest, I haven't looked too much into the beaver aspect of this eclipse. Just so you know, like every full moon has a nickname based on the month that it falls in. Okay. So this being November, every November full moon would be the beaver moon, essentially. And then the exception is...
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I think it's the same every year. And then the exception would be the blue moon. Once in a blue moon, you get the second full moon in a month. There's based on when that happens, there might be different names. So like, and it is very relevant. Like for instance, when the Milwaukee Bucks won the NBA championship, that was the first NBA Finals that concluded in July, and it was the same day as the buck moon. There's a buck moon on that date. So I mean, it's definitely significant. They pay attention to it. I want to make some kind of connection between beavers and elections. I don't know why, but
So, yeah, I feel like it has to be important in some way. I feel like I haven't had enough time to kind of meditate on it and just like look through some things and think about that.
there's a
Uh,
builder riddle. I mean, the Freemasons see themselves as builders of society.
mhm,
Beavers build dams. I say
that's a good
damn
point.
a lot on election night. So there's that.
I'm gonna be i- are we gonna have the Texas governor vote tomorrow? It's this
I'm not
election,
sure.
right?
Well,
I
he
would
took office in 2015, so it's been 8 years. I don't know.
wow. Because not everybody likes his opinion, but I don't know if I'm really ready for Beto O'Rourke as governor of Texas.
Beto O'Rourke, isn't that the gun control guy?
Yeah,
How would he get elected? That seems unreal.
I don't think he is, based on the last poll that I saw. But then again, you go on Reddit, you go on Texas Reddit subreddit or Houston subreddit or anything like this, or even drive through Houston. There's a lot of O'Rourke picket signs, and people really don't like Abbott. And I'm not saying I agree with Abbott on every single thing that he has done. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, I don't. I have a very very bad feeling about the other candidate and what that might look like in the long term, especially in a state like Texas, which I've been very happy to be in the past 2.5 years for obvious reasons. And
Yeah, for sure.
at our gigs, when we're playing out and performing, I say these things on the microphone. We'll banter a little bit, talk about the song, but I'm like, I did it this weekend. I said, people need to remember that we are in one of the best states and cities in America right now when it comes to freedom and working and doing what you got to do. And don't take that for granted.
No, that's been one good thing from the pandemic, at least, is that people start to realize that freedom, man, like you got to keep on your toes. That's not just something your ancestors won a long time ago. There
Right.
will come more people who want that freedom. Pull it out from underneath you. You got to stay on top.
Yeah. Uh, and I just don't think that people necessarily respect that enough. I do think that a lot of native Texans specifically, there is a vibe to them that is different than other people. I know every state has their own kind of thing like that, but especially, something like with gun control or just the nature of these people. One thing that I just remembered, unless you had something that you wanted to say,
No,
really.
go ahead.
You brought up a couple minutes ago or a little bit ago. This is totally different, but I had to bring it up because I thought about it the other day too. The yin and yang symbolism of the sun and moon rotating. Is that right? Kind of how you put it, or like,
Yeah, I mean, you have the white and the black, and
mhm.
the sun being the white, and then gets blacked out essentially. Um, more so the shape, the number 69, and how it relates to eclipse.
Right. Even the shape. That's kind of what I meant to say. I was watching a Flat Earth Explained video because I just love to watch them. I'm not saying I'm 100% sold. I'm getting, you know what? I'm not even going to say it so that somebody can take this out on me. But there was, when they're talking about it being flat, they're not talking about it's like just paper thin flat or anything like that. Somebody is saying that it's more of a disc, something like that. But what is cool is that when they showed how everything works, and I thought that this was pretty well put together. And I'm really trying to scrutinize this while I'm looking at it. But it actually was a yin and yang sort of motion to it when it's traversing on top. And I thought, wow, that is one way that I hadn't thought of it. Shape, form, even just yin yang in general. And I was like, that actually makes a lot of sense to me. Derek, what are your thoughts on that subject right now?
I don't really understand the whole flat Earth thing. I guess. I
So,
think the world can be a number of things. I just, when it comes to being flat, I don't see that at all.
So round, like globe.
Well, I think so, based on my observations and what makes sense. I guess what really gets me is, that we have evidence that things definitely dip below curvature or something of that effect. Skylines from across lakes. One of my favorite is actually something in England. It's called the Galloper Wind Farm. Really interesting.
Okay.
If you look this up, they have these massive windmills out in the middle of the ocean, basically. The channel to Europe. These things are 600-700 feet tall, and they have plenty of pictures, with the boats, just tiny little boats compared to these massive windmills.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at the windmills from the shore, I mean, you just see the very top of it spinning, So the fact is, these things are dropping below something. To me, it's probably the curvature. And plus, we also have. Yeah. I mean, we also have sites like Flight Radar 24. You can board the planes yourselves, and the paths make sense. They sync up with what a globe would be. So for me, I mean, I get that, yes, we can see further over the curve. And to me, that speaks to the fact that, mass changes the direction of light, which is why the sun and the moon actually appear for longer than they would when they dip under the horizon on either side. I try to stay open-minded because I understand that this reality we live in, whatever this is, it's holographic, it's a construct, it's a creation. So that alone allows for many possibilities, right? That we're not definitely aware of. I don't get the whole flat earth thing, but to me, I feel like it was something that was intentionally injected into YouTube and other platforms because none of us can really prove it, right? I mean, I can make conjectures and say it's a globe, but I'm not going to get someone who doesn't understand those same ideas to necessarily agree just because. And then it's just, to me, it was kind of thrown in to make fun of the whole truth thing and conspiracy theories. And I'd like to think it's obvious that people have been egged into conspiracy theories to some degree, and like the phrase conspiracy theory, that's a conspiracy. Like that was brought to light because of a conspiracy. So there's layers to what we're looking at. And yes, NASA lies about a whole ton of stuff. A lot of the stuff they put out is complete fabrication. It's fake, but I mean, can they get away with lying about the shape of the Earth? I really don't think so. So,
do you have anything about the like a high altitude balloon, like the videos with the high altitude balloons and them not having curves on them?
Yeah, I mean,
is there a good explanation for that I'm like I might just be not understanding or missing?
Well, for one, I believe that you have to be very, very high up to distinctly see curvature. So we're talking like probably 100,000 feet up into the sky, because not only is the Earth massive, but the atmosphere itself dilutes the ability to see that curvature. So you got to be way up high. If you want to send me videos, I'll look at them. I know that some of these things have fish eyes, which changes it in either direction. But I mean, I just know you got to be really high because the Earth is truly, truly massive. But again, until I can see like, high points over bodies of water, no matter how far they are, I don't think flat's the right term. I just think we live in some sort of system where it may not be what we're told or what we can really comprehend.
Right.
That I'm open to.
Well, we've been trying to say that more recently. Like, let me not say that I'm over here being like, oh yeah, I'm totally in line with it being a flat Earth. What I'd rather say is there's some things that I really need like somebody to explain for me, because I'm gonna feel like an idiot if I'm thinking of it that way. And I can't find a good alternative argument, or that it's just different than what we have been told. Or maybe, maybe it's just larger overall. Like the Earth is so much larger than we know it to be.
Well, that's a more interesting thought to me, is that there could be parts of the Earth that have somehow been hidden. I don't know how much, again.
I feel like that could also be a measured thing. Like that seems a little bit of a stretch too, because you would think that you can get the radius based on a shadow and stuff like that.
Can I quote Chad Wesselcamper here? I'm gonna quote Chad.
Yeah, please. I hope it's an awesome quote.
You got problem, you got reaction, you got solution.
Oh,
Okay. Problem. We don't know what we're on. Reaction. Lots of confusion, lots of questions, lots of assumptions. I think I know. I think it's obvious. It appears to be this way, whatever. Solution. We need to get a glimpse of where we're at. And so how do we do that? You know, for us, obviously, we're not Elon Musk. We don't have billions of dollars. So the task of getting to the point beyond this earth where we can look at it and it seems so daunting. And then you're inside a shuttle that has windows. How do you know what you're seeing through? You have to be really in space with your eyes in space to see it. And so how are we going to do that, Derek?
Well, that's a good question. I certainly don't have the funds to get a damn rocket up there. The weather balloon seems to be the best way to do it, but no matter what, the thing always, it's eventually going to pop, eventually going to come back down. When you look at the space programs, which we talked about at length earlier, I would say it's pretty clear and pretty evident that they get high enough up to get into orbit, but how do they get beyond that? And do they get beyond that? Does anything get beyond orbit, low Earth orbit?
right.
That's where I struggle. Like, we can still have satellites that work without being, 25, 30,000 miles out from Earth.
Right.
Where's the James Webb? Where is that? How far out is that? Is that in low Earth orbit? Because I almost thought it was.
I think it's further out than the space station.
Okay.
Right?
That's what I thought. Yeah. I should look into that.
Yeah. The whole thing's an interesting topic because NASA clearly, they could tell us more and show us more than they do, but they intentionally blur the lines, I think, to keep that mystery out there so that people do keep debating about it. For whatever reason, flat Earth is a very contentious thing, and I never understood why, but like,
right.
It seems like people get triggered so easily, and I can kind of get it from more of the traditionalist side, the globe view, where I come from, where to me, I always thought it was obvious. I never believed the Earth was flat. It's just like we look up and we see things moving in a certain pattern. Stars on the north and south don't really move. The rest of them move fast. The way the sun comes up, it's the same size when it's overhead as it is when it's on the horizon. Like, these are things that just tell me the Earth is, there must be a curve to it. But so when originally I saw the flat Earth stuff, it did kind of tilt me a little bit because I was like, can't you see the obvious? It's just obvious. Can't you see? So it's designed to keep people upset. And then the other side of it is like, oh, well, you just believe everything you're told. Don't you know you're being lied to? And it's like, I'm the Gematria guy. Of course I know I'm being lied to. But, so to me, it's the perfect topic to keep people distracted and bickering. And which is why you had so many huge YouTube channels, and all those channels, all the comments made it seem like everyone thought the Earth was flat. So 95% likes, in YouTube itself, none of it's real. The numbers, the likes, a lot of the people are just bots. It's just a fantasy world. So everything's manipulated on there, and it's manufactured consent, which includes pumping up flat Earth videos so that people just assume that everyone else thinks it's flat, so it must be true. When my videos started to go viral, the Gematria videos, it was the opposite. They were really, really highly rated at first, but then once they caught the viral algorithm, they sent in armies of trolls to thumbs down my videos until there were more dislikes than likes, and then it dropped off the algorithm. So that's what true truth content, that's the fate that it really reaches on YouTube.
Yeah.
If the Earth was really flat and it was something they didn't want you to know, it wouldn't be getting millions of views on YouTube, period. So I just don't think it's that simple. I really do think it is a globe.
Okay.
But again, I'm open because I don't know. I'm just a
hey, I kind of thought
just a doofy guy walking around, going to the grocery store, getting my food.
I really for sure thought it was, even can still very much think that. It's just that there are some things that I have seen. Again, it's almost not super worth talking about. The only reason it is worth talking about is because if there was something that we didn't know, the implications of that are very important. but you know, it's not the most pressing matter. Whereas I think the things that we were talking about in this podcast are very pressing and very relevant to what's going on. Do you know if there's any gematria related to it, or have you looked into it at all yet regarding everything that's going on with Kanye?
I've dabbled a little bit. I think the stuff with Kanye is that he's one of these lifelong themes. And if you look at Kanye's numbers, just go ahead and pull this back up real quick. But Kanye West, he's this Jesus crucifixion character. And
Crucifixion character.
yeah, for sure. So so we start with his birthday, June 8th, 77.
Ah, I didn't know it was June 8th.
So the word crucifixion equals 6/8, which is June 8th. And then Christ is 77, right? So in reduction ordinal, you get the crucifixion of Christ. His full name, Kanye Omari West, actually, I'm sorry, Kanye West itself is 33. And 33 is the age that Jesus was. Also 123. 123 is crucifixion of Jesus Christ. 123 and 33.
See, this is already very weird because of how yeah, I won't even say what I was gonna say, but it's already looking pretty weird.
So back in 2017, I believe this statue just randomly appeared in Hollywood, and it's a statue of Kanye West that says false idol, and he's in this crucifix pose.
Huh. Whoa.
Yeah, so this was completely coded by the numbers, and it was all the same numerology for that I shared. I think this was on 2/22/2017. I don't even know what I'm doing right now, but 2072 weeks old definitely stands out because it was 2/22. 2020. So the year 2022 is 272. Eclipse is 2/22. I don't want to do a full decode on this, but clearly the symbolism is there, right?
Wow.
And so
Yeah,
whenever
maybe
he's
just
in the news, it's something to do with expanding or contracting consciousness. And this whole thing now he's going after the Jews who crucified Jesus, right?
Right.
I mean, to me, it's like so silly. I didn't even look at it, honestly, but I'm sure there was more to it. One of those ongoing things where
Well,
there's a lot of different dates.
it's become kind of an ideological call sign at this point. Either you are with Kanye or you're not. And I think that's too broad of a thing, because
Of course.
what's interesting is that you have the people who are like, "Oh, I'm definitely not with Kanye," and that means that we can basically assume where you're at politically. And if you're with Kanye, you can also kind of assume where somebody's at politically, but then again, you can't.
It's wild how many figures they give us that are so that are so perfectly divisive, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, and that's why you it's wrong to just fully agree with any of these people. You know, I mean, yeah, Kanye should have the right to speak out. Should you go around posting, you know, is Hebrews and Negroes or whatever? Is that the type of material? Is that the name of the message you want to share? I mean, the whole thing just makes me shake my head.
Let me interject, because we keep talking about the organic nature of this, and also the figureheads that they put in front of us. I mean, it's kind of annoying because at this point, I'm kind of where you're at, Derek, probably, and I think we all are, which is that if it's on the news, it's probably a setup, you know, because at the end of the day, every aspect of this matrix is integrated in itself. So it's not as if one tentacle is behaving without the knowledge of the other tentacle, so on and so forth, because it's like a factory that they've created, an entertainment production factory of ideas and info. And but in that regard also, I like to drop the allegory of the cave here, because, you know, when you're in your mother's womb, that's the first cave you exit, and then you're in the real world. And then you exit the cave of your own mind when you become more sentient, more aware of the world, and you enter adulthood and you're having more experiences. But I think one of the ultimate caves, if you want to put it that way, or something that will take humanity into a new paradigm altogether, is when we exit this celestial cave, or when we're able to see past this celestial cave. Because let's face it, every aspect of our decision making is in this grid, the earth, whatever we want to call it. And if we're wanting to eject from this position and go beyond and go into the esoteric, go into the mystical, we need to be able to exit this earth, or have some sort of mastery of this earth. Like the captain of the ship knows where to dock the ship, plant it, get off the ship, repair the ship, and that makes him the master of that ship. But imagine we're on this ship, no one can get off of it, nobody knows what it's made of or where it's going. I don't think that's conducive to a real awakening or real progress ultimately. Am I making any sense right now?
Well, yeah, I mean, it sounds like what you're saying is that it's worth it to pay more attention to maybe what we're living on, what we're living in.
Mm-hmm.
To me, numerology is just it's a window to operations that we're not consciously aware of. And I don't think I necessarily give all the answers with numerology. You know, sometimes it just brings up more questions, if anything. But to me, it's, you know, it's showing a function of reality that simply a lot of people aren't aware of. And if this is possible, if this is happening, right, if it actually matters, like what my name sums to in regards to what happens in my life, you know, what other bizarre, incomprehensible things are true?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that reminded me, I'm glad you said that right there, because it just triggered this thing for me. Have you seen these like life design? It's like you know, you kind of have astrology, everything related to that, and then there's this other study called life design. Have you seen this at all, Derek?
I don't think so.
Ah, man, I feel like it's somewhat very interesting and important, because it has to do kind of with life path, or it's related to your time of birth. It's related to where you're born. It's similar to astrology in this way, but I was reading my life design chart, just kind of to see what was going on with it, and I would definitely say that, wow, it sounded very very spot on. It's like the images look like a human body with kind of like related to your chakras, and it'll give you stuff, and there are people who are more into it than others. Anyway, I recommend doing that because I feel like that's a little bit part of it. It's like maybe these natural functions that we're talking about, and the outcomes and fate and all this stuff. One thing that was sad about mine was it's like the first 30 years are going to be awesome. Then 20 years are going to be spent rebuilding or going down. And then the next 20 are going to be spent rebuilding. And I was like,
wait a minute, that was the easy part? I just did the easy part?
So I hope that's not exactly the case, or that's or that I can be aware of that and make that better, because I'm not trying to go down.
A lot of those systems are interesting. Like I also look at a lot of birth cards recently, just cards from the playing deck, like every date of birth connecting to a certain playing card, and then that playing card has a certain description with it that talks about your personality and different challenges you have in life. This is something where I wasn't sold on it at first, but I started paying attention and I realized it's like a lot of things where even with numerology, sometimes it's like so spot on. We're like, this is undeniable. And then on a, maybe less often, it just completely whiffs, right? I see that with some of these other things too, the birth cards being one. And there was a website, I can't remember the name of it. You said it was Life Design. Maybe it was something like that. But even before I got into Gematria, it had me put my full name in, and then also my date of birth, time of birth, down to the second minute, basically.
Yeah.
And the thing that came out of it was so dead on. It freaked me out. Like I sat there in shock. It was like everything about how I advanced in my profession. You know, it's like you don't invent systems, but you come across and find them and refine them and make them good. I don't know. I could get into it, but
Yeah.
man, it was so dead on. And I did it for a couple other friends and it was dead on for them. And then like I showed my dad or something and there was nothing was there at all. But I was like, how odd that I can get, you know, consistently dead on description. Same thing with the birth cards. And all of a sudden you run into one where it's a dud. And you're like, well, is this person on their right path? or is maybe this just, you know, foolishness? I don't know.
Yeah.
What was this system called? Not the birth card, but the other one.
Destiny. I think it's Destiny cards was what I was with the birth cards. So for instance, I think if you just type, let me find the address.
Or is this like a thing that I can look up?
No, you can look it up. Oh, now it's an error, of course. It was called Know Your Destiny cards. And the site's down. Okay, well, I I don't know what to tell you, but yeah, Destiny cards, something like that. There's also a book on them that my business partner got. But yeah, mine is the King of Diamonds for June 4th. And I looked up the King of Diamonds and it was like, oh, this is the only one-eyed king in the deck. So you always see things from your own perspective. And it's also called the businessman's card, saying that you'll always do better as a leader of your own business as opposed to working for others. And I'm like, yeah, okay, well, we're getting somewhere. And it just kept hitting the nail on the head, you know. It's interesting too because pretty much all of these cards will say like you can achieve success or, you know, great heights. Some cards will say you'll have great challenges, but then other cards will say, oh, you'll coast pretty easy. It's interesting, you know. It's like it's written in a way that it doesn't restrict anybody, but it does let people know that they'll have other challenges. And like I have one friend who he in our let's just say he has a hard time with girls, right? And we read his birth card to him. And his birth card literally said, you may find yourself dominated by women or thoughts of women, blah, blah, blah. And I finished the thing. I was like, does that sound accurate? He's like, yeah, it's dead on. I was like, what the fuck is happening? Like,
that's crazy.
It's pretty wild, man. So,
you know, the card that I just got, I looked up my October 8th birthday card, and it happened to be the Ace of Diamonds.
Oh.
And I was just seeing this big chart. So like Armin is November 20, November 2020. King of Hearts.
Come on.
And Derek, you said yours is the King of
Diamonds. Very royal assembly here we have on this podcast.
Fuck yeah. November 17, right? Derek?
My birthday is June 4th.
I mean, sorry, Jesus. I knew it was June.
Yeah.
I was just
the old Gemini.
Yes. Yep. King of Diamonds. Yeah. Okay, so we got a King of Hearts, a King of Diamonds, and an Ace of Diamonds. God damn. That's pretty powerful.
I think so.
I like the sound of that and fits the description, I think.
Give me 10 minutes. Okay.
All right, we got 10 minutes. So let's get really into it. Let's get to the point where we're about to get banned, but just right before that. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Basically,
typically ride that line every day.
You know, I do think that we've covered a lot of awesome stuff, and Derek, we're obviously so thankful that you even take the time to just chat with us. Is there anything else that you think that you want to say, that you want to get across, that we haven't touched on, that we forgot about?
Well, I mean, you guys seem pretty aware as far as you know, my work and what's going on here. Oh, I did want to cover the Comedy Central thing.
Oh, and I was going to ask you about that. Please, yeah.
Okay, let's do that because this was fun.
That's so cool.
Yeah, like I guess this kind of speaks to numerology as a whole too, because the emotions I experienced in the hour after I saw this clip were very similar to the emotions I've experienced over years of doing Gematria work, where I saw this segment and at first I got really angry, right? Because I was like, damn it, they're making fun of me. These motherfuckers, here they go again. And I got all mad. And then I realized, well, maybe it's not all so bad, And then I took a second look at the date that they uploaded it, and I was like, oh my God, they did this for me. Like, they specifically put it on this date knowing I would see it and look at the numbers and say, oh wow. So do you get audio from this or no?
Try it. I didn't hear anything.
I could rewire it through my let me see if this works.
We're not getting the audio.
All right, let me know now.
What's Gematria?
Can I pull my phone out for a second?
Sure.
Okay, so it's called the Gematria and it's a calculator.
Gematria is a mystic numerological key and an app which allows believers to type in words and get back meaningful numbers.
You type it in the calculator, you get these numbers. And so Michael Jackson's last concert was This Is It, comes to 113.
You know what that means? Do you? I don't know what that means.
So 113 means not true.
So Michael Jackson, that wasn't his last concert.
And he's alive.
Michael Jackson's alive. People are talking. Is Bin Laden still alive?
Tim,
Are you doing math right now?
no, I'm trying to remember his real name. Tim.
Osama Bin Laden.
Yeah, Tim.
Tim.
Someone, forgot his last name.
Tim is not the most Saudi name.
And he wasn't Saudi, he was from the CIA.
How does MAGA and Trump fit into all this?
Well, Trump, 88.
Help me out with
Jay
that.
Kennedy, 88.
So they're the same person?
I don't know. That's what Gematria says.
Type this. America is in a bad place.
146.
What's 146 mean?
Let's go Brandon, 146.
Right? That means
Let's go Brandon's 146.
let's go Brandon's 146. And so is America is in a bad place.
Yes. Let's go Brandon.
But do we want to connect those two?
Well, we are connecting it. That is connected.
It does feel connected.
It does.
I
Does
think-
it feel good? Do you have goosebumps yet?
I'm getting goosebumps
I have
right now.
goosebumps too.
Wow.
That was funny, but
That's a spit on our faces. That's what that is.
yeah.
It is. Look, it is. I mean, that was the intent, right? Was to make fun of Gematria. And I thought they did a decent job of that. And it's pretty easy to make fun of Gematria. Like, I've even made fun of Gematria on my channel in the past with an April Fool's video. Because, if you find the wrong person who's like, I mean, come on, like, if you look into Gematria, you know that this is all, everything that's on the news, Republican, Democrat, it's all a stage show. So the fact that people use Gematria just to support their stance, we should expect that. So yeah, I saw this and I was really upset, but then I realized, well, this might actually help because they didn't have to put my freaking calculator basically on there. Now they didn't call it Gematrinator, but it was very obvious that they were
It's very
honoring
clear. Yeah.
my logo, and they used the actual breakdown underneath it, like from the site.
Yeah, with the
And-
color, with even the coloring.
Yeah. So I saw this and I'm like, okay. And then what I thought was, was this on a particular date? And the first thing I realized is that this segment was filmed in Wisconsin, which is where I live, right?
Oh shit.
Yeah. And they did it on August 11th, which is so 8/11 is the 141st prime number. And that date leaves 142 days in the year. So 141, 142. Well, Gematrinator is 141. And then my name, Derek Tikkuri, is 142. So is
Ah.
Gematria. So they
See?
did this, and even the date numerology, 8/11/2022, 61. My name, Derek Tikkuri, 61. There was more also connected to my birthday, but those are the big ones. So I have no question they uploaded this on that specific date, done in Wisconsin, where I'm from, mimicking my calculator. This was them like tipping their cap to me a little bit, I think.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's cool.
And see, like your breakdown for people who watch the Comedy Central thing, they might be like, "Oh, that's so dumb. They would do that." Like the Trump supporter would be like, "Let's go, Brandon is 142." But then you do your breakdown of this whole thing. It's like, no, this is it's a very complicated, nuanced thing. You actually have to really pay attention, especially when watching your videos. We're like, you gotta watch and you gotta listen. You can't really zone out.
That's true.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've tried to cater to people who do zone out. I can't do it.
No,
Um,
and you're so clear too. Like you are as clear as it gets, I think. Or you are, not even I think. And you just it's just that you have to follow the information if you're gonna want to understand it.
It's rapid
Yeah.
fire, yeah. So I mean, yeah, exactly. Though they do this segment making fun of Gematria while also practicing Gematria. Like, it's just funny. I mean, to me, you have to find humor in it, you know. But hey, I mean, you know, that segment in the 20 days that followed for that month, my site traffic went up 35%. So
Oh,
thanks Comedy Central. You know, I've had views on my channel that get more views than the freaking Daily Show anyway. So, you know, it's like this is what they do. SNL just a couple weeks ago, they stole some video from the internet, and then now that guy on the internet is way bigger than he was. It's almost like they're honoring people who are doing good work in a sense and helping them get traffic. I don't know. It's not whatever's going on. It's not just all bad, is what I'm trying to point out, which is the feeling a lot of people get from conspiracy videos and whatnot. It's not just pure evil people in media trying to always mind control you. Like, either there's people also working for us, or you know, there's different types of things being practiced. But
Derek,
this isn't necessarily bad per se, not for me anyway.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, what's up?
out of 10, 10 being extremely likely, 0 being not likely at all. What is the likelihood that there is a higher conscious awareness throughout this universe?
I'd say like a 25.
25.
Yeah.
Goodness.
What that consciousness is, I mean, I'm not totally sure if it's a separate entity from humanity itself, or if it's the collective experience of humanity itself that's helping to guide us. You know, the Mother Earth, you know, imbuing certain people, whatever humanity needs, there will be a person born with that, you know, bringing it out. I feel like there's no question. I mean, I came into this believing in a higher power, believing in God. I didn't expect to have that affirmed by numerology. You know, I got into this as a conspiracy. Then I discovered, oh my gosh, this is happening around us all the time. To me, that's a gift from whatever creator that is, because I'm the kind of guy, I mean, I'm an intellectual, or I'm a nerd at least, where, you know, I can say and preach about God, but I don't like not knowing. Like, even though I felt it, that I just had that feeling. I wasn't day to day experiencing God, or I didn't feel like I was. But with this, it's like, oh, he's here, all right, and it's in your face. It's undeniable.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, since I've been into numerology, like, I don't want to take. And I was never big into drugs anyway, but I really don't have the desire for it now, because I trip out every freaking day looking at this stuff. You know, this is the channel to the ultimate. What's the word? Singularity, maybe. It's kind of a word that scares people a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of what this speaks to. Is there is a singularity involved with consciousness that's connected to everybody on a quantum level, not limited by the speed of light, whether it's subatomic or superatomic. You know, there's more empty space than anything at a molecular level, and I think that's where the God figure, the geometry, does his work.
Chad, I want you to have the last word, but I have one more follow-up question. You said 25, right? And then you say now you don't even want to even mess with drugs of any sort. I already know the answer to this question, but out of 10, 10 being very much so, how much has all this research and realization brought you closer to a purpose or a feeling of balance and clarity? How much has it elevated your life? You know, like, I don't want to talk like I'm saying, you know, without Jesus, you're going to perish. I'm not going at it from that angle, but I'm saying, is this connection important for humanity to feel?
Yeah, I think so. I believe that humanity always had this sense and this knowledge, or at least for a great amount of time. It wasn't until this Western culture kind of took everything over where, maybe it was the Catholic Church 1,000 years ago or whatever, where they really started to hide as much as they could about who we were, what we were, in our histories. So for me personally, I always consider, I struggled with depression in my 20s. Like I was on medication for a little bit. I was diagnosed bipolar at one point, which, I don't feel or see that anymore. And a lot of it came down to the fact that I was just looking for something more. Like I had this, and it was the same thing that plagued me throughout school. I didn't even graduate because I just couldn't freaking sit there and listen. Like I was craving so strongly, like actual real knowledge that mattered and meant something. And really, it was this stuff that I was looking for the whole time. If someone had taught me this when I was a kid, I would have been a lot happier because I would have had my preconceived notions about the world affirmed through this. Like I said, I always thought there was a God. It made sense to me that there was, but I never saw the evidence of that. And that as a kid, even, not knowing that this side of reality existed, I was just always kind of troubled by it. I ended up in a troubled relationship for all those years just because everything else was out of alignment. So my hope is that we can get this knowledge to people in a responsible manner too, which is important. Because again, there's a lot of people who peddle everything as conspiracy, and that's not true.
Mhm.
And a lot of people who are introduced to this knowledge at a young age, they're introduced in the wrong fashion or with the wrong energy associated with it, and they get the wrong ideas about reality is. And all I'm saying is that I understand why this knowledge used to be withheld from people until a certain age, right? Like there's a certain responsibility that comes with that too. So I'm not saying like we should always be teaching kids this kind of stuff, but my idea is that the same revelations I've come to through numerology, I'd like to share with other people so that they too can also be turned to this side of reality, which is the supernatural, so to speak. Which I've always had a knack for. I've always wanted to talk about, but again, never had the real evidence for. So my likelihood, as far as like how much this has helped my life, I mean, it's like a 9 probably. I was in a rough place when I was younger, and stumbling into Gematria and having the combination of thirst for knowledge and also a brain that's full of obsessive compulsive disorder and wants to make connections and stuff, like it was the perfect recipe. And a big reason I put my actual real name out there and everything is because I wanted people to know that I wasn't messing around. I wasn't joking. Like this numerology stuff, I want it to be taken seriously because it is serious and it's very interesting. It's not just some wacky, crazy conspiracy theory. It's legit. It makes things, and it makes life more fascinating. So many people are buried in entertainment, shows and games, and for some people that works, but for me it certainly didn't. So, I had to see something else, and this doesn't cost anything to to dive into this world. It's a free enlightenment tool essentially. And there are things I charge for, but I mean, when you get to the base tools and everything that's always been there, that's all free. So
Yeah, seriously, the fact that your whole website is really free to use, Matt, a lot of respect to you for that, because it's so cool. And like I said to you the other day, like we try and show a bunch of people. We just had this huge rabbi on our podcast. We brought your website up at the very end. Now, granted, we are not as skilled in the relationship, and it's like you have like a dictionary in your head at this point, or like an encyclopedia of numbers and connections, which is so cool. And when I introduced you earlier, I said that you were a G, and I meant that like a gangster, but you are literally the G, the Gematrinator.
Yeah, no, that worked out.
So I'm glad that worked. Derek, thank you so much for coming on here, man. Like I feel very just connected to you in a very easy way. I think we both do. And we're so glad that you can be here, and we appreciate everything that you do. We try to show you to as many people as we can because we are right there with you on the work. And I'm going to be putting this podcast out ASAP, aka tonight, tomorrow morning.
Awesome.
So I'll let you know. And obviously we'll put all the links and everything in like we do. And that's that.
Perfect. I
Yeah,
appreciate it. Yeah. Thanks again for having me on. It's always enjoyable.
All right,
this was
boys.
fun, man. Absolutely, keep up the good work. I think we're about to break through something pretty incredible here in the next few years. So I'm very excited.
Yeah. Thanks, man. I mean, I didn't know what to expect when I launched, and asked for support. But the fact that it's already, pretty much keeping up with itself, and I agree that, dude, like what I've been doing is like 10 years ahead of the curve. I really think. I mean, when I started this, like I couldn't even talk to people about numerology. They'd be like, they just automatically brush you off as crazy. No one does that anymore. I mean, it literally went from like everybody thinking I'm crazy to almost no one, and that's just friends and family or whatever, personal life.
Yeah.
So imagine, this next generation that's coming up. Of course, there's going to be a lot of idiots because that's what they've created through culture. But this is going to be, I think it's going to resonate with more and more people as they get older. And, it's cool to be at the front of that and to have the little community that we have. Again, I agree. Maybe it'll just be that one celebrity, some Jenner or something who tweets out a Gematria picture, and the next thing you know, it's fucking everywhere and the media can't control it anymore. And I mean, already with that segment, like, yeah, that segment made fun of Gematria, but if you read between the lines, they were showing you stuff like Trump 88. That was just 2 days after Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate was raided on 8/8. Like,
Wow.
I mean, they were
Man, I
poking
didn't
people. If you just pay a little attention, take it yourself, you'll find that this is phenomenal. And that's why my traffic didn't only just go up in August, but it stayed up the next month. So, that wasn't totally just a hate piece or a hit piece. They were, telling people who want that knowledge between the lines. I think that it was right there. So probably not the last time you'll do it either.
Really.
Well, unfortunately, we started mowing right behind me. I don't know if you can hear that too much, but oh, good. Well, with that, let's keep it moving forward. Let's push this out to everybody, and just I think it's an amazing thing. So,
and I appreciate the help, man, because anytime someone links a page or a video or a blog or whatever, that's a potential, new, not only just a new awake mind, but a new follower for me, for you. I mean, if they get to my work through you, they're still going to remember you. So I like
and we absolutely have a bunch of friends that are hip to you, that are watching you.
Yeah, if there's one thing I've discovered since going live with this website, it's that I definitely get way more views than YouTube tells me. Like, definitely. I mean, 1,000 views per video? No, dude. It's way more than that. I don't know what the numbers are, but it's been good to see. I got a little flack for restricting the match database, but like the thing was broken, the servers couldn't handle the load anymore. So there were certain things I had to do. And dude, if you would believe it, I got death threats after updating the website.
From people who enjoy Gematria?
Well, that's why I said, man, not everybody deserves to be looking at this shit. Because some people are still stuck in like such a fucked up place of conscience where they see that, oh, I'm trying to make money. Oh, you're trying to make money. Like,
I don't have any disrespect for that at all.
Like, I'm making a third of what I made at GE. Right. I mean, I'm making jack shit for money compared to what I was. It has nothing to do with what I'm doing. Nothing. It's just I just want enough money so I can keep doing this.
Yeah, that
and if I get a
bothers
little
me.
extra, then great. But that's not what it's about,
Yeah.
Well,
you keep
that's a whole other conversation. Go ahead, Chad.
Yeah, I was gonna say you keep doing what you're doing because we're right there with you, and we're all for it. And you got to make some money. I would want you to be making money. I wish. It's amazing how free your work is right now and how frequent you are.
I mean, my videos are still all free, and I still get comments, dude. Every fucking live stream, someone comes in, oh, you're hurting the truth community by charging for this information. Like, really? How much did you pay to watch this video where you're learning about numbers? Nothing.
It's weird.
So I think the type of people who tend to get into Gematria tend to be the conspiratorial type to begin with.
Sure.
So, and a lot of people who happen to be into conspiracies happen to also not have a whole lot going for them themselves. I mean, I don't want to knock the community that I'm part of, but it's true. You know, there's a lot of a high percentage of the people are fucking losers, unfortunately, who just their only skill they think is running Gematria on games and betting on sports. So, you know, when you get over 100,000 users like what I have, I mean, there's going to be some shitbags in there, right? And that means if 1% is unhappy, I got 1,000 messages. So it's a lot different than it was in 2018 when I last updated the site, where I had maybe 10, 20% of the users. And now you give them 4 years to be used to the same thing day in, day out. People were fucking angry, dude. And another thing too is like, I don't know what percentage of those people were legit and what percentage of them were actual trolls. Because when I flipped that switch and we went live, it was like 10 or more people came to my Discord and they had memes ready and shit. Like, fuck you, Derek, with animated memes, and fuck your family. Like, I'm going to fuck your sister and kill your parents and shit. I was like, what is going on? Like, this is too coordinated. It was all these people at once.
Holy
So
shit.
it's as if they were waiting for me to go live and then they just like attacked.
Wow.
And
Wouldn't
I
be
mean, I've been through it
surprised.
before, man. It's, you know, it's not, I won't call it gang stalking, but hey, that's kind of what it is, like in a sense, on an electronic level, you know. But I've been going through that.
If about half of Twitter is bots, as we're discovering through the court litigation and everything, it's likely half of social media is bots, and that would imply that it's $1 million industry. So, the idea that there's a network that keeps up with channels and maybe attacks channels and buffers others, it's not only possible, but it's extremely likely. So,
Oh yeah, I feel like I have the proof, especially with the way my YouTube channel was. Like I talked about earlier, like within hours, I got 500 thumbs down on a video when it was like it was 800 likes to 300 dislikes and that was at like 20,000 views, and then the video went viral, and it got up to 60,000 views, 1,000 likes, still a little around 300 dislikes, and then over the next few hours, I checked back later, and it was 1,100 dislikes and like 1,099 likes.
Wow.
And then the views stopped going up because now there are more dislikes. So, I mean, I saw that happen with my own eyes, like over the course of hours. I mean, this was before they changed the algorithm. Now these channels are flagged. Channels like mine, they simply will never go viral, period. But before, they had to have backup plans in case videos like mine went viral. So I got to see that. I saw it all play out from my side. Like, I know exactly what they're fucking doing. I know exactly what is going on. I know how much bullshit they're feeding me. I've done analytics on views compared to likes and shown that it's just a formula. Views are just a formula based on likes and amount of like length of video and time uploaded. So I know what they're doing. It's just trying to get people to see it or believe it. That's always challenging, but
I think we're right there with you, because it's very hard for us to get traction despite who has been on the information that has been discussed, etc.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I had a friend Chance from Interverse. He had Owen Benjamin on. That was a really big podcast for him, but he has a really hard time too. And
I really like that podcast, Universe.
Yeah, he's awesome. I feel like Gematria, man, it's just I kind of got lucky in a sense too, because it's so niche. And I came along at the right time too, you know, with the right skills, where it just kind of all fell into place. So to me, like it's fun to be successful in the truth community, but you know, I feel like I owe more than I should get from it, because like how did I don't even know how I ended up in this fucking role. like I said, it's I wouldn't have believed it had you told me this 7 years ago, that's for sure.
It was ordained, that's why.
Yep. Yeah, that's why I got the Gematria numbers. I was gonna quickly show you too. This was a post I made earlier this year. So I found in my old notebook, sometimes I go through these old notebooks that I have just randomly. When I was 13, I did a decode on Mark McGuire's record-tying home run for Babe Ruth. And I wrote it all out in pen. And there's no gematria in here because I didn't know gematria. But already when I was 13, I was picking up on number stuff going on. And I started to list things out, you know, like I saw that Maris hit 61 in the year 61. McGuire hit 61 on his dad's 61st birthday. And Maris hit 61 on Mark McGuire's birthday. So even as a 13-year-old, I'm like, what are the odds of that? So I saw this when I was older, and I'm like, oh, the name John equals 61. His dad, who turned to 61 when he hit 61. So that inspired a whole new decode. But yeah, I listed this all out, and it was like
So cool.
I'm saving this too because I'm like, what if someone pays me money one day for this? You know. But this is when I was 13, right? So it was 1998. I just did a post on the Truman Show, or more or less Harry S. Truman, which is here. And this whole post is about the number 156. The movie came out on the 156th day of the year, like Truman Burbank. 33, the 33rd president is Truman. His name is 156. So was the Emperor of Japan. This was all connected to the nuclear code. And the first nuke, or the last nuke, went off 156 weeks after the Manhattan Project began, right? So I have this whole post with 156. And in that post, I also show my own movie ticket to the Truman Show, which I still have to this day because I love that movie so much when I saw it. So if you run my age on that date, it was one day after I turned 156 months old. I was like, whoa, that's weird. But this is already like, there were two other movies in 1998 that I have syncs with. And one of them is Pi.
Oh, I remember you talking about that.
Yeah, because this guy was born on June 4th, which is my birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And Sean Gillette equals Gematrinator. Derek Tikkuri equals Max Cohen, his name in the movie. So my real name matches his character name. His character name matches my real name. We have the same birthday.
Oh, God.
And then The Matrix also came out when I was 13. And The Matrix is a 1331 riddle, which is my favorite number, this big eclipse number. And that's because it came out on March 31st, 99. So you have 3/31, 1999. So 331, right? And if you write out 331, it sums to 1331. And then, where was it here? Oh, the numerology of this was 133. And when you write out 133, also 1331. The eclipse number that I always talk about. Well, look how old I was on the freaking date of this film. I was 13 years, 301 days old.
Oh, no. That's so much.
Yeah. So all of this happened when I was 13, which is the year I did my one decode, the only decode I ever did until I got older, right?
Oh, shit.
So to me, like, this is why I said what I did about drugs. It's like, what is trippier than coming to the realization that the world has been awaiting your arrival?
Mm-hmm.
That and drugs. No, I'm just joking.
I know. And you would think like I was on drugs to come up with that, but no, it's just I'm looking at this and it's like, oh, it's all scripted for me, man. I mean,
Well, good thing you
my-
weren't, because then people, could use that against you.
right? Well, oh, Gematria is the 142, yeah. Then my full name is 203, right? Like the number 23, where this guy teaches Gematria. And of course it's Jim
I should
Carrey.
watch that.
Yeah, it's the same guy who was in the Truman Show, Jim Carrey. And Jim Carrey was 23 years old when I was born. And his full name equals 95, just like mine. So it's like, oh, and what I was going to say is this 1198, because reverse gematria, nobody was talking about until my calculator came around, is 1198. And the 95, which is my name. So I don't know, man. It's wild. So it's synchronicity on crack almost.
Synchronicity on crack. I love it. Yep. I feel like ever the very first moment that I became aware of it, I guess through the Torah code, as I mentioned a long time ago, through this book called the Torah Code. I think that I always thought it was something very interesting. And then later on, I found your website randomly, not connected to you, but just found the website. This was years ago. And then I forget how it got started, but I've always thought it was just so important and so interesting and a very tangible,
That's the word I
very
always
tangible practice for these things, that I feel like has a lot of substance. It's not
Yeah.
you saying I saw a ghost. It's you saying here's something tangible.
Tangible is the best word for it. I don't use that word enough when it comes to gematria, but that's why I think it's so niche, is because I'm not just talking about my theories. I'm showing you things. Like everything I've shared is 100% fact. And I don't have to try not to lie or fuck up,
Right.
because it's all right in front of me and it's all verifiable, which is why it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, you can tell me it's a coincidence or that people didn't do it, but I mean, it's like it's information ultimately.
Yeah. And
that we didn't
once you go, like, the thing with people is that they have to take the time, take a little bit of time to maybe go through an entire video with you and not just be very surface, like, oh, here's one match. It's like, no, when he starts getting into it and you start going birthday, death, that's actually when I feel like some really crazy, like the connections about like born and event and
Well, those are the two biggest ones always. Like birth and death
Right.
will be coded without exception.
Right. And prime number, all this kind of stuff. It's like you have to create the whole map.
It's a tapestry of numbers.
Yeah, tapestry of numbers to really get the significance of it and not just be like, oh, it's just dumb coincidence. It's not like that.
Right. Like people say too, like, oh, it's 666, but it's in different ciphers. Well, if you were practicing gematria, would you do the 666 in the same cipher over and over and over again so that someone could just come along and be like, oh, 666? Like, no, you would put some occultation behind it, And that's what I think with gematria. It's like there's just enough where, I mean, you have your 4 base methods, and not every number. I'm not always going to talk about every number all the time, but there's just enough wiggle room to put some really wild shit in there too.
And it's different. It's almost like different keys. If you had like people decoding, people creating, I'm forgetting the word. Geez, you're trying to make different keys, or if somebody was making different keys, they'd have different ways of going about that.
Well, like what I say is I don't try to decrypt anything. Like if people are sharing messages with gematria, we're not going to figure it out unless you're like a super genius or have a supercomputer already. I mean, if there's messages being shared with gematria, then there's probably it probably works like encryption on a text message or something. I can't imagine we're going to be cracking any codes that way, but you don't need to see something phenomenal is happening. So I think with some people, like they try to take gematria too far, where it's a piece of the puzzle, and it's, like I said, it's information, but it's not going to tell you everything. And just, look at all the people who lose money on sports betting with gematria. The fact that there's so many people betting using numerology, but they can't come to a consensus on what's important or what formula to use. I mean, that should tell you enough right there that there's a level of nonsense to it, I guess.
It's hard to tether. It's hard to, or like chain down almost.
Well, right, because you can run numbers and say something's going to happen on a specific day. Like one thing I did actually, I tried predicting when Aaron Judge was going to hit his 61st home run. And what I realized doing this post is that it can't happen on this day because it's too good. I legitimately said that to myself. I was like, once I ran the gematria of the pitcher, even that was scheduled for the game, I'm like, oh no, it's too much. They're not going to do it. And sure
And
enough,
they didn't.
they
Or-
did it the day before.
Oh.
So that's another thing is this rule of Colel, which is the one-off rule. I don't talk about it very often because talk about playing with numbers, right? Now you're changing numbers. But they really do this where they'll find like a super, super perfect day like this one, where the numerology was 57 and 21, and the date was 10-5 and 5-10. All four of those numbers connect to moon in the base 4 ciphers. Like it's a super max moon day. And then you look at Aaron Judge and he turns exactly 407 moons, like Judge, like time.
Mm.
And then
Whoa.
you go down here and you see the 162, which connects to all of this. And then even the pitcher that he was going against, 162, 216, 2,162 days after the Cubs in 2016. His name is 261. I'm just like, it hit me right here where I was like, nope, I'm wrong. I'm wrong.
That's a lot.
And sure enough, he does it the night before. And I might have gotten it right. I didn't know there were 2 games being played during Yom Kippur. And Yom Kippur is the day of judgment. And he broke the record on the night of Yom Kippur. And then the next day was the day of Yom Kippur. And his name matches Yom Kippur, 144.
Wow, my God.
Yeah, so Aaron James Judge is 144. Yom Kippur is 144, and he wears number 99. And it's the day of judgment.
Wow.
So it was perfect, but one day off, that's all.
That's so cool. Well, I'm glad we got a full episode in here.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, I was gonna say how much. Well, now I'm thinking about is like how much would Derek charge if I sent you like a bunch of data on a person, right? And I was like, hey, find me some connections here. Like really go deep. Is that something you offer? Have you
well,
thought about that?
I'm still kind of brainstorming how to go about that because it is something I want to do, but it only serves like one person at a time when I do that, as
Right.
opposed to, giving people knowledge. And what would be nice is if people were more comfortable with giving me their personal numerology and stuff and letting me share like their whole family's numbers. But who's going to do that, right? Because they don't want their whole family's names and birthdays shared. And even I have limits on that. Like I want to share more about the organic matrix, but I'm not going to share all my friends and family's full names and birthdays. I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah.
Let me give you an example, Armin. Then, so like someone's last year, I was doing this a little more often. Someone, his little sister got hit by a car when she was 15 back in like 2004 or 2005 or something, or 3, I don't know. And he's like, can you help me? Because I ran the numbers. I can't find anything. I don't know what's going on. I just want to know more about my sister's death, And I was like, well, okay. So he sent me the news article that talked about his sister. And the news article kept talking about Avril Lavigne because she dressed up like Avril Lavigne. That was her favorite artist. And she used to skateboard to school and stuff. So I was like, okay, well, how does the date she died connect to Avril Lavigne? So the date that Avril was born, and then the date that her first record came out, which happened to be my birthday, June 4th, 2002. And I ran the numbers, and I found, boom, like it all fell together through the numbers 15, 65. She was 15 years old, hit on 15th Street. 15 equals 65. It was exactly 65 weeks after Avril's birthday, or Avril's album, and 65 days after Avril's birthday or something. But it was enough where I showed it to him and he was like, holy shit. Like, wow, you found it. I'm just like, I just followed the news article, And I realized like people are so used to over analyzing and overthinking things that they don't think to how is this? And like, why would you think, oh, let's connect this to Avril Lavigne? But I think Gematria is a study of consciousness where what you're putting energy into is what you're going to be connected to. So if you make yourself up every morning to look like a certain person and listen to that person's music, you're going to jump on that person's wavelength, and things that happen to you might be connected to that whole thing. And perhaps even people at the record industry very likely, put their own little symbolism, their own little sigil, their own little spell on the album before pressing it, sending it out into the public. So now there's an extra wave to pick up on that more and more children might, ride that wave. So that's what I try to show is like our lives are constant blooming synchronicities with people around us. So I might be able to look at your birthday and name and find like some cool things, and I might be able to pick out a date in the future that has cool alignments, but there needs to be more because you don't experience life on your own. So why would just your numerology? It's not going to have the whole picture. It's just going to have a little sliver of it. It's going to give me a corner piece to the puzzle. Yeah,
I totally agree. It makes perfect sense.
I like that, a corner piece of the puzzle.
Right, the easy one to put together, like your name, your birthday. Those are the easy parts.
Right.
It's finding the what connects to the middle is the hard part sometimes. But often, the more logical you keep yourself, and like again, try not to overcomplicate. That seems to be how it works. So
Well, that sounds. I love that, and I think we'll close it out here.
okay, right on.
I really have to go to the bathroom at this point.
Yeah, I usually end up going between like in the middle of a podcast, but
a lot of coffee has gone through me today, and it's time.
All right, brother. Well, drain that lizard.
Thank you. Thank you so much, man. Like seriously.
Yeah, it's fun. Thanks for having me on.
I'm gonna keep trying to support you in every way possible. So
I appreciate it.
To keep it going. And I'll talk to you guys very soon too. I'll email you.
All right. Well, next time one of your sports teams is on its way to a title and rappers start dying in your town, give me a call.
We will.
Cool, man.
All right, guys. I'll talk to you later.
Take it easy.
See ya.
Peace out.